The wheel splintered with a sound like a gunshot, and Marin Ashford was thrown sideways into the carriage door, so hard the breath left her body. The vehicle lurched, tilted, and then came to a shuddering halt at an angle that told her the axle had not survived either. Rain hammered the roof in sheets so thick the windows were nothing but rivers of gray. Somewhere ahead, the coachman was shouting, his words swallowed by the wind. This was a disaster. A complete and unmitigated disaster. Marin pulled herself upright, ignoring the ache in her shoulder where she had struck the doorframe. Her traveling dress was twisted, her hair half fallen from its pins, and through the rain-streaked glass, she could see nothing but the vague shapes of trees bending in the gale. The door wrenched open. The coachman stood there, soaked through, his face drawn with worry. "Miss Ashford, the wheels shattered clean through. We cannot go further. How far to the next village? 6 miles at least. Maybe 7. He shook his head, water streaming from his hat. In this weather, on foot, it would take hours, and the storm's only getting worse. Marin closed her eyes. She was 2 days from home, traveling alone except for servants, because Aunt Honoria had taken ill in Bristol, and someone had to fetch her medicines and correspondence. Her brother Callum had wanted to accompany her, but his business in London could not wait, and Marin had assured him she would be fine. Fine. What a laughable word. Is there any shelter nearby? A farmhouse, an inn, anything? There's the Wren and Thistle about a mile back. Small place, but it would have rooms. Then we will walk. In this rain, miss, you will catch your death. I will catch my death standing here arguing about it. Marin gathered her skirts, preparing to climb down into the mud. Help me with my small trunk. Leave the rest. We can send for it when the storm passes. The coachman looked as if he wanted to protest further, but another gust of wind nearly took his hat, and he simply nodded. Marin had made it exactly 12 steps into the downpour when she heard hoofbeats. Or rather, she heard the splashing thunder of a carriage approaching at reckless speed, and she turned just in time to see the vehicle emerge from the curtain of rain like some dark beast. It stopped abruptly. The door flew open, and Soren Vance, the Duke of Harcourt, stepped out into the storm as if the weather were merely an inconvenience. Miss Ashford. His voice cut through the wind, sharp with something that might have been surprise or might have been irritation. She could never tell with him. What in God's name are you doing, standing in the middle of the road? Enjoying the fresh air, she shot back. What does it look like? Our wheel broke. He was already striding toward her, his greatcoat flaring behind him, rain plastering his dark hair to his forehead. He looked exactly as he always looked. Commanding. Impeccable. As if the world existed merely to arrange itself around his convenience. She had known Soren Vance for 5 years, ever since her brother Callum had befriended him at Oxford. He had been 25 then, already carrying the weight of a dukedom on his shoulders after his father's sudden death. She had been 19, plain and unremarkable, the kind of woman men looked through on their way to someone more interesting. Soren Vance had never looked through her, but he had never truly looked at her either. He acknowledged her existence with the distant politeness one might offer a piece of well-maintained furniture. She was Callum's sister. That was all she had ever been. You cannot stand here in the rain, he said, reaching her. His eyes swept over her, assessing. Where is your escort? My coachman and footmen are attempting to salvage what they can. She lifted her chin. I am walking to the Wren and Thistle. It is only a mile through a storm that is worsening by the minute. His mouth pressed into a hard line. Get in my carriage, I beg your pardon. My carriage. He gestured impatiently to the vehicle behind him. Get in. I will take you to the inn. That is entirely unnecessary. I am perfectly capable of walking. I have no doubt you are capable of many things, Miss Ashford. His voice was flat, unreadable. but I'm not leaving you here to drown in a ditch while I ride past in comfort. Your brother would never forgive me. Your concern for Callum's feelings is touching." Something shifted behind his eyes. "Get in the carriage, please." It was the please that undid her. Soren Vance did not say please. Not to anyone, as far as she knew. Maren looked at the rain, looked at the mud already soaking through her boots, looked at the long, dark road ahead. Then she looked at the Duke of Harcourt, standing in the downpour, as if he had all the time in the world, waiting for her to make the sensible choice. "Fine," she said. "But only because my dress is already ruined, and I see no point in destroying my boots as well." She did not wait for him to help her. She marched past him to the carriage and hauled herself inside, dripping onto the leather seat, feeling like a drowned cat that had wandered into a palace. He climbed in after her, pulling the door shut against the howling wind. The sudden silence was almost worse than the noise. Now she could hear her own breathing, could feel the weight of his presence across from her in the dim interior. The carriage began to move. Maren stared out the window, watching the ruined shape of her own vehicle disappear into the gray. Her coachman and footman would follow on foot, would find their own accommodations at the inn. She was alone with Soren Vance, alone, soaked, disheveled, and trapped. He had not said a word since entering the carriage. She could feel him watching her, though, that assessing gaze that always made her feel like she was being catalogued and found wanting. "You are staring," she said without looking at him. "I'm trying to determine if you are injured." "I am not. You hit the door quite hard when the wheel broke. I saw it from the road." So he had been watching even before he stopped. Something about that knowledge made her uncomfortable in ways she could not quite name. "I am fine, Your Grace. Merely wet and inconvenienced." The silence stretched. Outside, the storm raged on. And somewhere ahead, through the relentless gray curtain of rain, the wren and thistle waited with whatever fresh disaster this day had in store. The inn was chaos. Maren could see it the moment they stepped through the door, Soren's hand hovering at her elbow, as if he expected her to collapse at any moment. The common room was packed with stranded travelers, all of them damp and irritable, voices raised in complaint and conversation. The fire roaring in the great hearth was fighting a losing battle against the chill that crept in every time the door opened. The innkeeper, a stout woman with graying hair and the harried expression of someone who had long since passed her breaking point, spotted them immediately. Her eyes went to Soren first, then to Maren, then back to Soren with the kind of calculating assessment that made Maren's stomach tighten. "Help you, sir?" "We need rooms," Soren said. "2 rooms, if you have them." The woman laughed. It was not a kind sound. "2 rooms? Sir, I have got travelers sleeping 3 to a bed tonight. The storm has caught half the county on the road." She consulted a ledger, shaking her head. "I have 1 room left. 1. With 1 bed. Take it or leave it, because I have a dozen people who would snatch it up in a heartbeat. 1 room. 1 bed." Maren felt the blood drain from her face. "Surely there must be something else," she said. "A private parlor, a settee somewhere. I do not require luxury." The innkeeper's gaze sharpened, moving between them with renewed interest. "Traveling together, are you?" "No," Maren said quickly. "We are not. We merely happened upon each other on the road. Our situations are entirely separate." "Is that so?" The woman's tone suggested she did not believe a word of it. "Because it looks to me like a gentleman and a lady arriving together in the same carriage, both wanting rooms. And that, miss, is what I call traveling together." Maren opened her mouth to protest, but Soren spoke first. "She is my fiancée." The words hit her like a physical blow. She turned to stare at him, certain she had misheard. But his expression was calm, almost pleasant, as if he had not just told the most outrageous lie of her entire life. "Your fiancé," the innkeeper repeated slowly. "Yes." Soren reached for Marin's hand, and before she could pull away, his fingers closed around hers with firm deliberation. We are traveling to her family's estate to announce our engagement formally. The storm caught us, as it caught everyone else. His smile was smooth, practiced. Surely you can understand our desire for privacy. The innkeeper's demeanor shifted. Her suspicion melted into something warmer, almost conspiratorial. Oh, why did you not say so? Young love, caught in a storm. She pushed a key across the counter. Room's upstairs, end of the hall. Best one I have got, as it happens. Nice big bed. Marin wanted to sink through the floor. Thank you, Soren said, pocketing the key. His hand was still wrapped around hers, warm and inescapable. We will take supper in our room, if that can be arranged. Of course, of course. The innkeeper was practically beaming now. I will have a girl bring it up. You two just settle in and wait out the storm. She winked. Take all the time you need. Soren guided Marin toward the stairs, before she could say anything that would destroy the fiction. His grip on her hand was firm, his pace unhurried, but she could feel the tension radiating off him like heat from a forge. They climbed the narrow staircase in silence. The hallway at the top was dim, lit only by a single sputtering candle in a wall sconce. Soren found their door, unlocked it, and pushed it open. The room was small, painfully small. A single bed dominated the space, covered in a faded quilt. There was a washstand, a battered wardrobe, and a fireplace that looked like it had not seen a proper cleaning in months. One bed. Marin stared at it. Then she spun to face him, wrenching her hand free. Fiancé? Her voice came out as a hiss. Have you lost your mind? I was protecting your reputation. He closed the door behind them, leaning against it as if to block her escape. If I had let you explain that we were traveling separately but happened to arrive together, she would have assumed the worst. By morning, every person in that common room would know that Miss Marin Ashford spent the night at an inn with the Duke of Harcourt, under suspicious circumstances. So instead, they will think I spent the night at an inn with my fiancé, which is also scandalous. Less so. He loosened his cravat with quick, impatient fingers. An engaged couple stranded by weather is romantic. An unmarried woman sharing accommodation with a duke she claims not to be attached to is ruinous. She hated that he was right, hated it with every fiber of her being. And what happens when someone recognizes you? She demanded. When someone realizes you are the Duke of Harcourt, currently expected to court Lady Isolde Wyndham? Something flickered in his expression, too fast to read. Then we shall hope no one recognizes me. I gave her a false name. As far as anyone here knows, I am Mr. Soren Vale, merchant, and you are my devoted betrothed. This is insane. This is practical. He moved past her to the fireplace, kneeling to examine the meager pile of wood. One night, Miss Ashford. We will maintain the fiction, wait out the storm, and leave at first light. No one will ever know the truth. Callum will know. Callum will kill you. Callum will not know unless you tell him. He struck a match, coaxing a reluctant flame to life. And I suspect you have as much interest in keeping this quiet as I do. The fire caught, casting flickering shadows across his profile. He looked tired, she realized. There were lines around his eyes that had not been there when she first met him 5 years ago. His shoulders carried a tension that seemed permanent. She should be focused on her fury, on the impossibility of this situation, on the fact that she was trapped in a tiny room with a man who had barely acknowledged her existence for half a decade. Instead, she found herself asking a question that had nothing to do with any of it. Why did you stop? He went still. What? On the road. You could have driven past. You could have sent your coachman to help and continued on your way. Why did you stop yourself? For a long moment, he did not answer. The fire crackled. Rain lashed the window. Because I saw you, he said finally. and I could not look away. The words hung between them, strange and weighted with something she did not understand. Then he stood, brushing off his hands, and his expression shuddered once more. I will sleep on the floor. You take the bed. The floor is freezing. Then, I will be cold. He moved toward the door. I'm going to arrange for your trunk to be brought up. Lock this after I leave. Soren. But he was already gone. He returned an hour later with her small trunk and a tray of food. Maren had spent the intervening time pacing the tiny room like a caged animal, replaying his words in her head until they had lost all meaning. Because I saw you, and I could not look away. What did that mean? What could it possibly mean coming from a man who had spent 5 years treating her like a ghost? She was seated by the fire when he entered, her damp hair finally dry, her ruined dress exchanged for a slightly less ruined one from her trunk. She did not look at him as he set down the tray, did not trust herself to look at him. You should eat, he said. I am not hungry. You should eat anyway. He pulled the room's single chair closer to the fire, lowering himself into it with a careful grace that spoke of good breeding and better tailoring. It may be a long night. The food sat between them, untouched. Bread, cheese, cold meat, a bottle of wine. Simple fare, but more than adequate. Maren stared at the flames. Why do you do that? She asked finally. Do what? Pretend you care. She turned to face him, and something in her chest felt raw, exposed. You have barely spoken to me in 5 years. Every Christmas when Callum brings you home, you treat me like I am part of the furniture. Every ball, every dinner, every social gathering, you look through me as if I am not there. And now, suddenly, you are rescuing me from storms and inventing false engagements and telling me you could not look away. Her voice cracked on the last word. It does not make sense, she continued, quieter now. None of this makes sense. Soren was silent for a long moment. His gray eyes watched her with an intensity that made her want to look away, but she refused to give him the satisfaction. You think I have been looking through you, he said slowly. I know you have. Everyone does. She laughed, and the sound was bitter. I am Callum's quiet sister, the plain one, the one who fades into the wallpaper while everyone else dances and flirts and lives. I have spent my entire life being overlooked, Your Grace. I have made my peace with it, and you think I am part of that pattern. I know you are. He stood abruptly, and for a moment she thought he was going to leave again. Instead, he moved to the window, staring out at the rain-streaked darkness. You are wrong, he said. Am I? Yes. He did not turn. You are entirely, completely wrong. Then enlighten me. She rose from her seat, something hot and reckless building in her chest. Tell me why the great Duke of Harcourt has suddenly decided that Maren Ashford is worth his attention. Is it because we are trapped here? Because there is no one else to talk to? Because you are bored? Because I have been watching you for 5 years. His voice was low, rough, and I have never once looked through you. The words hit her like ice water. That is not possible, she whispered. Finally, he turned. His expression was strange, almost pained. The Christmas you were 20, you spent the entire evening reading by the fire while everyone else played cards. You were reading Wollstonecraft. I remember because I wanted to ask you about it. But Callum was watching, and I did not trust myself to speak to you without revealing too much. Maren could not breathe. The Harrington Ball 2 years ago. You wore a dress the color of autumn leaves, and you stood by the window, looking as if you wished you were anywhere else. A man asked you to dance, and you said yes, but you were miserable the entire time. I wanted to cut in. I did not. Stop, she said, but her voice had no strength. Last summer, at your family's garden party, you were talking to the old groundskeeper about his roses. You knew all the Latin names. You made him laugh. He turned back to the window, jaw tight. No one else noticed. They never do. But I did. Why are you telling me this? Because you asked why I stopped on the road. He was quiet for a moment. I stopped because I have been stopping for years. Every time I see you, I stop. Every time you enter a room, I notice. Every time someone overlooks you, something in me wants to shake them and demand to know what is wrong with their eyes. Marin's heart was pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. Then why, she asked, voice trembling. Why have you never said anything? Why have you let me believe I was invisible? Because you are Callum's sister. His voice was raw. Because I am expected to marry Lady Isolde, or someone like her. Someone with a title and connections, and the kind of alliance my family requires. Because you deserve someone who can offer you everything, and I am not free to offer you anything. So you watched from a distance and said nothing. Yes. And you expect me to believe that you have been silently pining while I spent 5 years thinking I was beneath your notice. I do not expect you to believe anything. His eyes met hers, and she saw something there she had never seen before. Something vulnerable. I am simply telling you the truth because you asked for it. Whether you believe me is your choice. Silence fell between them, thick and heavy. Marin did not know what to feel. Anger, certainly. Confusion. Something that might have been hope, though she crushed it down before it could fully form. This changes nothing, she said finally. Even if what you are saying is true, which I am not certain I believe, it changes nothing. Tomorrow the storm will break. We will leave. You will go back to courting Lady Isolde. I will return to being the sister Callum occasionally remembers exists. This, she gestured between them, is not real. Something shifted in his expression. Hardened. You keep saying that? Because it is true. Is it? He stepped closer, and suddenly the room felt very small. Tell me, Marin, when I look at you right now, does it feel like nothing? She could not answer, could not think. When I told you I have been watching you for 5 years, that you have never been invisible to me, did that feel like a lie? I do not know. Her voice broke. I do not know what is real anymore. Then do not believe me. His hand came up, hovering near her face, but not quite touching. Believe what you feel. When you look at me, what do you see? She wanted to say she saw nothing. Wanted to rebuild the walls he kept tearing down. But she could not lie. Not about this. I see someone who is terrified, she whispered. Someone who wants something he thinks he cannot have. His eyes closed. Yes. Why can you not have it? Because I am not free. Because my family expects an alliance, not a love match. Because your brother would never forgive me for wanting you the way I want you. The way you want me. His eyes opened. Gray, stormy, full of something that looked like pain. More than I have ever wanted anything. The words hung between them, heavy with possibility and impossibility. Then the floorboards creaked in the hallway outside, and they both stepped back as if burned. Someone was listening. The storm did not break. Marin woke to the sound of wind still howling against the windows, rain still hammering the roof with relentless fury. Gray light filtered through the frost-covered glass, barely enough to see by. Soren was already awake. He stood by the window, silhouetted against the pale morning, his shirt wrinkled from sleeping on the floor, his hair disheveled in a way she had never seen before. He looked almost human like this, almost approachable. Almost. How long has it been raining? She asked, her voice rough with sleep. All night. He did not turn. The innkeeper says the roads are impassable. The river has flooded the bridge to the south, and there are reports of trees down to the north. Marin's stomach dropped. So we are trapped here. For at least another day. Possibly 2. 2 days. 2 days in this tiny room with a man who had upended everything she thought she knew about herself, about him, about the careful, invisible life she had constructed. This cannot be happening, she breathed, and yet it is. Finally, he looked at her. His eyes were shadowed with exhaustion. I have arranged for breakfast to be brought up. You should eat something. You keep telling me to eat. You keep refusing. She wanted to snap at him, wanted to claw back some of the equilibrium she had lost the night before, but she was tired and hungry despite herself, and the fight had drained out of her somewhere in the long, sleepless hours. Fine, she said. I will eat. They ate in silence. The food was simple, bread and butter and weak tea, but Maren found herself ravenous. She had not realized how hungry she was until the first bite. I am going downstairs, she said when she had finished. I need air. I need to not be in this room. I will come with you. That is not necessary. You are my fiancé, remember? His tone was dry, but something flickered beneath it. We should be seen together. The common room was less crowded than the night before. Some travelers had braved the weather and left, desperate to reach their destinations despite the danger. Those who remained looked weary, resigned to their imprisonment. Maren found a seat near the fire, grateful for the warmth. Soren settled beside her, close enough that their shoulders nearly touched. She told herself the proximity was for appearances, told herself it meant nothing. Miss Ashford? The voice came from behind her, familiar in a way that made her blood run cold. She turned. Corwin Hale stood before her, golden hair perfectly arranged despite the storm, his handsome face arranged in an expression of pleasant surprise. He was dressed in traveling clothes of obvious expense, every inch the wealthy gentleman he had always been. Mr. Hale. She managed to keep her voice steady. What an unexpected encounter. Indeed, his smile widened. I was caught by the same storm. Dreadful weather, is it not? I had no idea you were traveling this way. A family matter. She did not elaborate. Corwin's gaze shifted to Soren, and something sharpened in his expression. And who is your companion? I do not believe we have met. Soren rose smoothly, extending his hand. Soren Vale. Merchant. Corwin shook it, but his eyes were calculating. Vale. I do not recognize the name. I am not surprised. I keep to myself, mostly. Soren's hand came to rest on Maren's shoulder, fingers curling with deliberate possession. My fiancé and I prefer privacy. Fiancé? Corwin's eyebrows rose. He looked at Maren with renewed interest. I was not aware you were engaged, Miss Ashford. Your brother said nothing of it when I saw him last month. It is recent, Maren said quickly. Very recent. We have not yet made a formal announcement. How wonderfully sudden. Corwin's smile did not reach his eyes. And how fortunate that Mr. Vale happened to be traveling with you when the storm struck. Fortune had nothing to do with it, Soren said. His voice was pleasant, but there was steel beneath it. I make a point of being where Miss Ashford needs me. How devoted. The word hung in the air, laden with skepticism. Maren's heart was pounding. Corwin Hale had been part of her social circle for years. Their families were neighbors. Their fathers occasionally did business together. He was exactly the kind of man who should have noticed her, should have courted her, and should have seen her as a prospect. Instead, he had looked through her just like everyone else. For 7 years, she had existed on the periphery of his attention, never quite interesting enough to warrant more than a passing greeting. And now, suddenly, he was looking at her as if she had materialized from thin air. You must join me for luncheon, he said, still watching her with that unsettling intensity. Both of you, of course. I would love to hear more about this unexpected engagement. We would not want to impose, Soren said. Nonsense. Corwin's smile sharpened. I insist. After all, Miss Ashford and I are practically old friends. Are we not, Miss Ashford? Old friends. The words tasted like ash in her mouth. Of course, she said. We would be delighted. Corwin bowed slightly and withdrew, but Maren could feel his gaze on her back as he crossed to the other side of the common room. He does not believe us, she murmured. No. Soren's hand was still on her shoulder, warm and steady. He is suspicious. He knows something is wrong. He suspects. That is not the same as knowing. What if he writes to Callum? What if he tells people what he saw here? Then we will deal with it. Soren's voice was calm, but his fingers tightened almost imperceptibly on her shoulder. For now, we maintain the fiction. We give him nothing to report except a devoted couple waiting out a storm. You make it sound simple. It is not simple. Finally, he looked at her, and his gaze was dark with something she could not name. But I will not let him hurt you. Whatever he suspects, whatever he thinks he knows, I will not let him use it against you. Why do you care? The question slipped out before she could stop it. Soren was silent for a long moment. Then, quietly, you know why. She did not. She did not know anything anymore. But before she could press him further, Corwin's voice rang out across the common room, calling to another traveler, and the moment shattered. The performance was about to begin. Luncheon was a careful dance of words and watching. Corwin Hale dominated the conversation, asking question after question about Soren's supposed merchant business, about their courtship, about when exactly they had fallen in love. His tone was pleasant, almost friendly, but his eyes never stopped calculating. Maren answered when she could, letting Soren fill in the gaps with smooth lies that sounded entirely convincing. He spoke of textile imports, of business dealings in the north, of meeting her through mutual acquaintances. Every detail was plausible, ordinary, forgettable. And yet Corwin kept probing. You know, he said, leaning back in his chair, I find it remarkable that I never noticed you before, Miss Ashford. We have been in the same social circles for years, have we not? We have, Maren said carefully. And yet I cannot recall a single memorable conversation between us. He tilted his head, studying her. It is as if you were deliberately hiding in plain sight. The words stung more than they should have. Miss Ashford has never hidden, Soren said. His voice was quiet, but something dangerous lurked beneath the surface. She has simply been surrounded by people too blind to see what was in front of them. Corwin's eyebrows rose. That is rather harsh. It is rather accurate. Soren set down his fork, his gray eyes fixed on Corwin with unsettling intensity. You say you cannot recall a memorable conversation with her. That is not her failing. It is yours. I beg your pardon. She has been at every ball you have attended for the past 7 years, every dinner party, every garden gathering. She has been there, Mr. Hale, and you looked through her as if she were made of glass. The table had gone very quiet. Maren's heart was hammering against her ribs. She wanted to stop him, wanted to tell him this was unnecessary, that she had made her peace with being overlooked years ago. But something in his voice held her silent. I have watched men like you circle rooms full of women, Soren continued. I have watched you dismiss the quiet ones, the thoughtful ones, the ones who do not perform for your attention. You call it not noticing. I call it blindness. Now see here, Corwin started. No, Soren's voice cut like a blade. You see here, Miss Ashford is the most remarkable woman in any room she enters. She reads philosophy for pleasure. She knows the Latin names of every flower in her family's garden. She makes elderly groundskeepers laugh. She has more intelligence, more depth, more genuine worth than a dozen society beauties put together. And you did not notice her because she did not demand to be noticed. That is not a flaw, Mr. Hale. That is a quality. One you were too shallow to recognize. Silence fell. Corwin's face had gone red, his pleasant mask cracking to reveal something uglier beneath. You are very passionate in your defense of your fiancé, Mr. Vale. I am stating facts. Facts, Corwin laughed, but there was no humor in it. You speak as if you have known her for years, not weeks. Time is irrelevant when you pay attention. Soren rose from the table, his hand finding Marin's elbow with easy familiarity. Now, if you will excuse us, my fiancé and I have matters to discuss. He guided her away before Corwin could respond, through the crowded common room and up the narrow stairs, his pace unhurried, but his grip firm. Only when the door closed behind them did Marin find her voice. What was that? The truth. He released her elbow, moving to the window. Nothing more. You practically declared war on him in front of a dozen witnesses. He was insulting you. He was making an observation. She pressed her hands to her temples, trying to slow her racing thoughts. Men have been making that observation my entire life. I do not need you to fight battles I have already lost. You have not lost anything. He turned, and his expression was fierce in a way she had never seen. You have survived. You have endured years of being overlooked by fools who could not see past their own shallow preferences. But that doesn't mean you have to keep enduring it. Why does it matter to you? Because I see you. His voice cracked on the words. I have always seen you, and watching him sit there and casually dismiss everything you are made me want to put my fist through his smug face. Marin stared at him. This was not the distant, controlled Duke of Harcourt she had known for 5 years. This was someone else entirely. Someone raw, unguarded, barely holding himself together. This is different, she said quietly. How? Last night you told me things in the dark, private things. But just now, in front of everyone, you defended me like I mattered, like I was worth fighting for. You are worth fighting for. He turned to face her fully. That is what I have been trying to tell you. But why? Her voice cracked. Why now? Why not 3 years ago, or 2, or even 1? Why did it take being trapped in an inn during a storm for you to finally say these things? Because I am a coward. The admission came out raw, unvarnished. Because I have spent years convincing myself that wanting you was something I could control. That if I never spoke it aloud, it would not be real. That I could marry someone else and eventually forget the way you laugh, or the way you tilt your head when you are thinking, or the way you make me feel like I am actually worth something beyond my title. Soren. I watched you today. He stepped closer. I watched Corwin Hale look at you like you were a puzzle he could not solve, and I wanted to destroy him. Not because he threatened our fiction, because he dared to see you at all, when I have spent 5 years pretending I did not. That is not healthy. No, it is not. His laugh was bitter. Nothing about the way I feel for you is healthy. It is consuming and irrational, and it terrifies me every single day. She stared at him, heart pounding. What do we do now? I don't know, but I know I cannot go back to pretending. He reached out, his fingers brushing her cheek so gently she might have imagined it. Whatever happens when we leave this place, I need you to know that none of this was a game to me. None of it was pretend. The fire crackled in the silence. Outside, the rain had finally stopped, but neither of them noticed. They stood there, inches apart, the air between them charged with everything they had not yet said. And somewhere in the back of her mind, Marin knew that whatever happened next would change everything. The rest of the afternoon passed in tense silence. Marin could not stop thinking about the way he had touched her cheek, about the rawness in his voice when he called himself a coward. Soren paced the small room like a caged wolf, checking the window every few minutes, as if he could will the storm to break. It did not. By evening, the rain had slowed to a steady drizzle, but the innkeeper assured them the roads would not be passable until morning at the earliest. They were trapped for another night. Supper was served in the common room. There was no avoiding it. No excuse that would not draw more suspicion than simply appearing and playing their parts. Corwin was already there when they descended. He had claimed a prominent table near the fire, surrounded by other stranded travelers who hung on his every word. He was charming, witty, the center of attention in a way that came as naturally to him as breathing. When he saw them enter, his smile sharpened. Ah, the happy couple. He gestured to 2 empty seats across from him. Please, join us. I was just telling everyone about your remarkable engagement. Marin's stomach clenched. Soren's hand found the small of her back, warm and steadying. We would be honored. They sat. The performance began. Mr. Vale was just telling me how he fell in love with Miss Ashford at first sight, Corwin said to the woman beside him, a plump matron in traveling clothes. Is that not romantic? Terribly, the woman agreed, beaming at Marin. You must be so happy, dear. Blissfully, Marin said, the lie bitter on her tongue. Tell us more, Corwin pressed. What was it exactly that made you notice her, Mr. Vale? Since apparently the rest of us were too blind to see. The table went quiet. Everyone was watching. Soren did not hesitate. She was reading, he said, Wollstonecraft, if I recall correctly. Everyone else in the room was playing cards, laughing, performing for each other. She was sitting by the fire, completely absorbed in her book, and she did not care one bit that no one was paying attention to her. The matron sighed. How lovely. I watched her for an hour before I found the courage to speak to her. Soren's hand found Marin's on the table, his fingers interlacing with hers. She looked up at me with those dark eyes, and I knew that I would spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of the way she looked at the world. Marin's heart was pounding. This was not a lie. He was describing the Christmas when she was 20, the night he had mentioned before. He was taking a real memory and weaving it into their fiction, and she could not tell anymore where the truth ended and the performance began. And what did she say? The matron asked eagerly. She told me I was blocking her light. Soren smiled, and for a moment it looked genuine. She did not care that I was titled, that I had money, that half the women in the room were trying to catch my attention. She just wanted to finish her chapter. The table laughed. Corwin did not. How fortunate that you persevered, he said. Despite such an inauspicious beginning. I have always believed that the best things in life require patience, Soren replied, and Miss Ashford was worth every moment of waiting. His thumb traced a slow circle on her palm. Marin felt the touch all the way to her bones. The meal continued. Courses came and went. Conversation flowed around them, but Marin heard almost none of it. She was too focused on Soren's hand in hers, on the way he kept looking at her, as if she were the only person in the room. It felt real. It felt terrifyingly, impossibly real. After supper, as the other travelers dispersed to their rooms or lingered by the fire, Corwin caught her arm. A word, Miss Ashford. Soren stiffened beside her, but she touched his sleeve. Just a moment. She let Corwin guide her to a quiet corner near the stairs, acutely aware of Soren's gaze burning into her back. You are making a mistake, Corwin said quietly. I beg your pardon? This merchant of yours. He's not what he seems. And what do you think he seems? I think he is hiding something. Corwin's eyes were sharp, probing. I think this engagement is not what you claim it is. I think you are in some kind of trouble, and he is taking advantage of your situation. You are mistaken. Am I? He stepped closer, and she caught the scent of his cologne, expensive and cloying. I have watched you for years, Marin. You have always been clever, cautious, and sensible. This sudden engagement to a man no one has heard of, this hasty journey with no chaperone, it does not fit. Perhaps you do not know me as well as you think. Perhaps. His gaze dropped to her lips, then back to her eyes. Or perhaps I am the only one here who sees the truth. And what truth is that? That you deserve better than a merchant with pretty words and possessive hands. He reached out, his fingers brushing her wrist. Your father trusts mine. Your brother values my opinion. One word from me could expose this entire fiction. Or, he paused meaningfully, I could protect you, if you let me. The implication was clear, unmistakable. Maren felt cold all over. I do not need your protection, Mr. Hale. Everyone needs protection from something. He smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. Think about what I have said. I will be here when you realize your mistake. He released her wrist and walked away, leaving her standing in the shadows, with her heart pounding and her hands shaking. Soren was at her side in an instant. What did he say? He threatened me. Her voice was barely a whisper. He knows something is wrong with our story. He offered to keep quiet if she could not finish the sentence. Soren went very still. If you what? She did not answer. She did not need to. The fury in his eyes told her he understood perfectly. I am going to kill him. You are going to do nothing. She gripped his arm, forcing him to look at her. We cannot afford a scene. We cannot afford to give him any more ammunition. He threatened you. He offered me a choice. A terrible choice, but still a choice. And what will you choose? She met his eyes, and in that moment, everything else fell away. The lie, the fiction, the impossible situation they had stumbled into. I choose you, she said quietly, even if it is only pretend, even if it ends tomorrow. I choose you. Something cracked in his expression. Maren, take me upstairs. She squeezed his arm. Please, before I lose my nerve. He did not ask what she meant. He simply took her hand and led her up the stairs, past the door where someone had been listening before, into the small room that had become their entire world. And when the door closed behind them, neither of them spoke for a very long time. The fire had burned low. Maren sat on the edge of the bed, watching the embers glow and fade, glow and fade. Soren stood by the window, his back to her, tension radiating from every line of his body. Neither of them had spoken since entering the room. The silence was unbearable. What are we doing? She asked finally. I do not know. His voice was rough. I have not known since the moment I saw you standing in the rain. This is madness. Yes. We should stop. We should go back to how things were. Pretend none of this ever happened. He turned. In the dim light, his face was all shadows and angles, his eyes dark as storm clouds. Is that what you want? She wanted to say yes, wanted to be sensible, practical, the quiet, invisible woman who never took risks, who never reached for things she could not have. But she was so tired of being sensible. No, she whispered. That is not what I want. He crossed the room in 3 strides. His hands cupped her face, tilting it up toward his, and for a moment they simply looked at each other. She could feel his breath on her lips, could see the war raging behind his eyes. Tell me to stop, he said. Tell me this is wrong, and I will sleep on the floor and never speak of this again. I cannot. Why not? Because I don't want you to stop. His forehead dropped to hers. We will regret this. Probably. It will make everything more complicated. I know. Maren. Her name on his lips sounded like a prayer, like a curse. I have wanted you for so long. If we do this, I do not think I can go back to pretending I do not. Then do not pretend. She did not know which of them moved first. Perhaps they both did, drawn together by a gravity that had been building for 5 years, for 5 days, for 5 hours. His lips found hers. The kiss was not gentle. It was desperate, hungry, the release of years of watching and wanting and never allowing himself to reach. His hands tangled in her hair, pulling pins free until the dark waves tumbled over her shoulders. Her fingers gripped his shirt, dragging him closer, closer, until there was no space left between them. He made a sound against her mouth, something between a groan and a sigh, and then they were falling backward onto the bed, a tangle of limbs and gasping breaths and clothing that suddenly seemed like an impossible barrier. Wait. He pulled back, bracing himself above her, chest heaving. Wait. What is wrong? Nothing. Everything. He closed his eyes. I need you to be certain. I need you to understand what this means. What does it mean? It means I am ruined for anyone else. His eyes opened, and they were raw, unguarded, stripped of every defense. It means that after tonight, I will spend the rest of my life comparing every woman I meet to you, and they will all fall short. It means that whatever happens tomorrow, whatever happens when we leave this room, you will own a piece of me that I can never get back. Tears burned behind her eyes. You think I do not feel the same? Her voice broke. You think I can go back to being invisible after this? After knowing what it feels like to be seen? You were never invisible, not to me. Then prove it. She pulled him down. Prove that this is real. He kissed her again, slower this time, deeper. His hands found the buttons of her dress, working them free with careful deliberation. Her fingers fumbled with his cravat, his shirt, the waistband of his trousers. Layer by layer, the barriers fell away. And when there was nothing left between them but skin and breath, and the desperate need to be closer, he paused one last time. I love you, he said. I have loved you for years. I will love you for the rest of my life, whether you want me to or not. She answered him with her body, with her hands, with her heart. The fire burned to ash. The storm raged on. And in the small room at the Wren and Thistle, two people who had spent years pretending not to see each other finally stopped pretending. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the narrow bed, her head on his chest, his arm wrapped around her waist. His heartbeat was steady beneath her ear, a rhythm she wanted to memorize. What happens now? She asked quietly. I don't know. His fingers traced lazy patterns on her back. But I know that I cannot marry Lady Isolde. I cannot stand in front of a church and promise myself to someone else when every part of me belongs to you. Your father will be furious. My father is always furious about something. He pressed a kiss to the top of her head. Let him rage. I am done living my life according to his plans. And Callum? Callum will want to kill me. He sighed. But he loves you. When he sees that I make you happy, he will come around. You sound very certain. I am certain of nothing except this. He tilted her face up, kissing her softly. Except you. Except the fact that I would rather face my father's anger and your brother's fists than spend another day pretending I do not love you. She wanted to believe him, wanted to wrap herself in his words and never let go. But somewhere in the back of her mind, a small voice whispered that morning would come, that the storm would break. That reality would intrude on this stolen moment, and everything would become complicated again. She silenced the voice and kissed him instead. Tomorrow could wait. Tonight, she was exactly where she wanted to be. She woke to warmth. Sunlight streamed through the window, weak but present. The first true light she had seen in days. The storm had finally broken. Soren was still asleep beside her, one arm thrown across her waist, his face relaxed in a way she had never seen when he was awake. He looked younger like this. Softer, like a man who had finally set down a burden he had been carrying for far too long. She watched him for a long moment, memorizing the curve of his jaw, the dark sweep of his lashes, the small scar near his temple that she had discovered the night before with her fingertips. The night before. Heat flooded her cheeks. She had given herself to him completely, had held nothing back, had let him see every part of her that she had spent years hiding from the world. And he had done the same. Every kiss, every touch, every whispered confession in the darkness had stripped away another layer, until there was nothing left but truth. He loved her. She loved him. And in a few hours, they would have to face the consequences of that love. His eyes opened slowly, focusing on her face, with an expression of such tender wonder that her heart ached. "Good morning," he murmured. "Good morning." He reached up, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "I was afraid I had dreamed you." "You did not." No. His smile was slow, intimate, a smile she had never seen him give anyone else. "I did not." He pulled her down for a kiss, soft and unhurried, the kiss of a man who had all the time in the world. She melted into him, letting herself believe for just a moment that they did. But then, voices drifted up from the common room below, the sounds of travelers preparing to leave, and reality intruded. "The roads will be clearing," she said against his lips. "Yes. We should prepare to leave. We should." Neither of them moved. "5 more minutes," he said. She laughed, a sound she barely recognized as her own. 5 more minutes. They took considerably longer than 5 minutes. By the time they finally dressed and descended to the common room, the inn was bustling with activity. Travelers were settling accounts, loading carriages, eager to be on their way after days of confinement. Corwin was there. He stood near the door, speaking with another gentleman, but his eyes found Marin the moment she appeared on the stairs. His expression wavered, something knowing and cruel flickering across his features. She looked away. "I will arrange for our carriage," Soren said quietly. "Stay here. Stay visible." She understood what he meant. If she disappeared into a corner, Corwin would find her. If she remained in the center of the common room, surrounded by witnesses, he would be forced to maintain propriety. She nodded. Soren squeezed her hand once, then moved toward the door. The moment he was gone, Corwin materialized at her side. "Miss Ashford, you look well rested." "Thank you. I trust you slept well." His smile was sharp. Despite the storm, despite everything, she kept her voice even. "And you?" "Tolerably." He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "I could not help but notice that Mr. Vale seems rather devoted this morning. More so than yesterday, even. One might almost think something had changed between you. Nothing has changed." "No?" His eyes swept over her, lingering in places that made her skin crawl. "You have a certain glow about you, Miss Ashford. The glow of a woman who has made a decision." "I do not know what you mean. I think you do." He was close enough now that she could feel his breath on her cheek. "I think you have chosen your merchant over my offer of protection. I think you have made a terrible mistake. I think you should step back before my fiancé returns and makes you your fiancé." Corwin laughed softly. "You are very committed to this fiction. But I wonder how committed he is. I wonder what will happen when you return to London and he remembers that he has a life that does not include you." The words hit like stones, because beneath her new confidence, beneath the warmth of the night before and the promises Soren had made, she still wondered the same thing, still feared that once they left this inn, once they returned to their real lives, everything would change. "You know nothing about us," she said, but her voice wavered. "I know men like him." Corwin's smile widened. "I know how they operate. They want what they cannot have, and once they have it, they lose interest. He wanted you because you were a challenge, an amusement to pass the time during a boring storm. When the novelty wears off, he will discard you like yesterday's news. You are wrong. Am I? We shall see." He stepped back, his expression smoothing into pleasant neutrality. "Ah, here's Mr. Vale now. I was just wishing Miss Ashford a safe journey." Soren's hand found her waist, possessive and protective. "How kind of you." "Not at all." Corwin tipped his hat. "I am certain we will see each other again soon. London is a small world for people like us." He walked away without waiting for a response. Marin was shaking. What did he say to you? Soren demanded. Nothing I did not already fear. A muscle jumped in his cheek. Tell me. He said you would lose interest. She forced herself to meet his eyes. He said that once the novelty wears off, you will discard me. Silence. Then quietly, furiously. He is wrong. Is he? Yes. Soren gripped her shoulders, turning her to face him fully. Listen to me, Maren. I have wanted you for 5 years. 5 years of watching you across crowded rooms, of finding excuses to visit your brother just to catch a glimpse of you, of lying awake at night, wondering what it would be like to touch you. If I were capable of losing interest, it would have happened long before now. But everything is different now. We are leaving. We are going back to our real lives. Our real lives. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. My real life is empty. My real life is duty and obligation, and the slow suffocation of becoming exactly what my father wants me to be. You are the first real thing I have felt in years. Soren, I am not going to discard you. He cupped her face, his gray eyes fierce. I am not going to lose interest. I am going to court you properly, in front of everyone. And when your brother tries to kill me, I am going to let him, because you are worth every bruise. She ached to trust every word he spoke. God help her. She ached for it so badly her chest felt hollow with longing. Promise me, she whispered. I promise. He kissed her forehead. I promise you everything. The carriage was waiting outside. Her trunk was loaded. There was nothing left to do but leave. As they climbed inside, Maren looked back at the Wren and Thistle one last time. A small inn, unremarkable in every way. A place she would never have noticed under normal circumstances. It had changed everything. The door closed. The carriage began to move, and somewhere behind them, Corwin Hale watched from the window with cold calculation in his eyes. They traveled in silence for the first hour. Maren watched the countryside roll past, still damp from the storm, everything fresh and green and impossibly ordinary. Beside her, Soren sat with his eyes closed, his hand resting on his knee, fingers occasionally twitching as if he were conducting some internal argument. The intimacy of the night before felt distant now, fragile, like a dream that faded the harder she tried to hold on to it. What will you tell your father? She asked finally. The truth. He did not open his eyes. That I have ended my understanding with Lady Isolde and intend to court another woman. Will you tell him it is me? Eventually. A pause. I need to speak with Callum first. Callum will not understand. Callum loves you. He will understand eventually. Eventually. She turned back to the window. That is not the same as immediately. No, it is not. More silence. Maren could feel something shifting between them, something subtle but unmistakable. The cocoon of the inn was gone. Reality was seeping back in, with all its complications and consequences. Are you regretting it? He asked suddenly. She turned. What? The night before. His eyes were open now, watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. Are you regretting what happened between us? No. You hesitated. I am trying to find the words. She pressed her hands together in her lap. I do not regret what we did. I regret that we did it in circumstances that make everything so complicated. The circumstances are temporary. Our feelings are not. You sound very certain. I am certain of you. He reached for her hand. The rest is just obstacles to be overcome. She wanted to believe him. She had been wanting to believe him for days now, and each time she came closer, reality found a new way to pull her back. The carriage slowed. Soren frowned, leaning to look out the window. Why are we stopping? Before Maren could answer, the door opened. Corwin Hale stood outside, his horse tied to the back of their carriage, his smile bright and poisonous. I do hope you do not mind, he said pleasantly. My horse threw a shoe about a mile back. Your coachman was kind enough to offer me a ride to the next town." Marin's blood went cold. Soren's expression did not change, but his hand tightened on hers so hard it almost hurt. "Of course," he said. "Please, join us." Corwin climbed in, settling on the seat across from them, with the ease of a man who knew exactly how unwelcome he was, and did not care. The carriage resumed its journey. "What fortunate timing," Corwin said, arranging his coat. "I was beginning to think I would have to walk." "Very fortunate," Soren agreed flatly. The tension in the carriage was suffocating. Corwin made pleasant conversation for the next hour. He spoke of the weather, the road conditions, and the inconvenience of unexpected delays. He asked polite questions about their destination, their plans, and their families. Every word was a probe. Every smile was a weapon. Marin answered as little as possible, letting Soren carry the burden of maintaining their fiction. But she could feel Corwin watching her, cataloging every glance she exchanged with Soren, every touch, every breath. He knows, she thought. He knows something happened, and he is waiting for the perfect moment to use it against us. When they finally reached the next town, Corwin departed with elaborate thanks and promises to see them both in London soon. The moment he was gone, Soren exhaled heavily. He's going to be a problem. I know. We need to get ahead of this. Soren ran a hand through his hair. We need to control the narrative before he has a chance to spread whatever version of events suits him. And how do we do that? I speak to Callum. Today, if possible. I tell him the truth before Corwin can tell him lies. Marin's stomach clenched. The truth. That I love you, that I intend to court you properly, that whatever he has heard, or will hear, my intentions are honorable. Honorable? She laughed, but there was no humor in it. We spent the night together in an inn. That is not honorable by any definition. We will be married within the month if you will have me. That makes it honorable enough. They traveled the remaining hours in silence, so thick it felt like a physical weight. When the carriage finally stopped, Marin's heart clenched. Through the window, she could see the familiar shape of her family's estate, the house where she had grown up, the gardens she had played in as a child. Home. But it did not feel like home anymore. It felt like a stage where the final act of this disaster was about to unfold. Soren opened the door and stepped out, then turned to help her down. Whatever happens next, he said quietly, remember that I love you. Remember that none of what we shared was pretend. She nodded, unable to speak. They walked toward the house together. Callum was waiting on the steps. His expression was thunderous. I received a very interesting letter this morning, he said without preamble, from Corwin Hale. He seemed quite concerned about your welfare, Marin, about the circumstances of your journey. Marin's heart stopped. Callum, she started. He held up a hand. Not here. Inside. Both of you. They followed him into the house, into the study, where their father sat in his usual chair by the fire, his face grave. The door closed behind them. Soren stepped forward. Mr. Ashford. Callum. I need to explain. Explain what exactly? Callum's voice was ice. That you spent 3 days alone with my sister at an inn. That you pretended to be engaged. That you have compromised her reputation in ways that may never be repaired. Silence. Marin felt the ground shifting beneath her feet. Everything was falling apart exactly as she had feared. She looked at Soren, waiting for him to defend them, to explain, to fix this the way he had fixed everything else. But when he spoke, his words shattered what was left of her heart. You are right, he said quietly. I have behaved dishonorably. Miss Ashford's reputation has been damaged because of my actions. And the most honorable thing I can do now is remove myself from the situation before I cause her any more harm. Marin stared at him. What? He did not look at her. I will not be courting your sister, Callum. You have my word. and then he walked out. 4 days passed. Maren moved through them like a ghost, eating when her mother insisted, sleeping when exhaustion overwhelmed her, speaking as little as possible. Soren had left, had walked out of her family's study, out of her life, without a backward glance, had taken every promise he had made and shattered them on the floor like dropped crystal. "I will not be courting your sister." The words echoed in her head constantly, a drumbeat of betrayal that she could not silence, no matter how hard she tried. She had believed him, had given him everything, her body, her heart, her trust, and he had thrown it all away the moment things became difficult. Corwin had been right. The thought made her sick, but she could not escape it. Corwin had said Soren would discard her when the novelty wore off, and that was exactly what had happened. The moment her brother demanded accountability, Soren had fled. On the 5th day, a letter arrived. It was addressed to her father, but Callum brought it to her room. "You should see this." She took it with numb fingers. The handwriting was unfamiliar, but the signature at the bottom made her stomach drop. Lord Edwin Vance, Duke of Harcourt, Soren's father. "Dear Mr. Ashford," the letter read, "it has come to my attention that my son has behaved inappropriately toward your daughter during a recent journey. I wish to assure you that I have spoken with him at length about the gravity of his actions, and he has agreed that the only honorable course is to terminate any association with your family. I understand this may cause some distress, but I am certain you will agree that a match between our families would be unsuitable for numerous reasons. My son will be announcing his engagement to Lady Isolde Wyndham within the fortnight. I trust this matter can be considered closed." The letter fell from her hands. "He is marrying Lady Isolde," she whispered. Callum's expression shuddered. Apparently his father gave him no choice. "He promised me." Her voice cracked. "He said he would fight for me. He said his father's plans did not matter. His father is the Duke of Harcourt." Callum's voice was gentle, which somehow made it worse. "What Soren wants has never mattered as much as what his father demands." So he just gave up. It appears so. Maren stood abruptly, moving to the window. Outside, the gardens were blooming, impossibly cheerful despite the wreckage of her life. "And what about my reputation?" she asked. "Corwin knows what happened. He will tell everyone. Father has written to Corwin's father. There will be consequences if he spreads rumors." "Consequences?" She laughed bitterly. "Everyone already knows. The innkeeper, the travelers, anyone Corwin has spoken to since we parted ways. My reputation is already destroyed. The only question is how completely." Callum was silent. "Father thinks I should leave London for the season," she continued. "Visit Aunt Honoria in Bath. Let the gossip die down." That might be wise. Wise. She turned to face her brother. "Is that what you want, Callum? To hide me away like some shameful secret? I want you to be happy." His eyes were pained. "I want to undo the damage that Soren Vance has done to your life. But I cannot do either of those things. All I can do is try to protect what remains. What remains is nothing." Her voice broke. "He took everything. My reputation, my heart, my belief that anyone could ever truly see me and want me for myself. And now he is marrying Lady Isolde, as if none of it ever happened. Maren, I loved him." Tears streamed down her face. "I loved him, and he promised me everything, and it was all a lie." Callum crossed the room and pulled her into his arms. She sobbed against his shoulder. 5 years of loneliness, and 3 days of hope, and 4 days of devastation all pouring out at once. "I am going to kill him," Callum said quietly. "Do not bother." She pulled back, wiping her eyes. "He's not worth the effort." But even as she said it, she knew it wasn't true. He was worth everything. That was the problem. That was why it hurt so much. That evening, another letter arrived. This one was addressed directly to her. The handwriting was achingly familiar. "Miss Ashford," it read. "I know you have no reason to believe anything I say. I know I have broken every promise I made to you, but I need you to know that my father threatened to destroy your family's business, to ruin your brother's prospects, to ensure that you never received a respectable offer of marriage from anyone. I could not let him hurt you to punish me. I am writing this from my study, where I have been confined since returning home. My father has arranged everything. The announcement, the engagement, the wedding. I am to have no say in any of it. But I wanted you to know that nothing I said to you was a lie. I love you. I will always love you. And I am sorry that my love was not strong enough to protect you from the consequences of having it. Do not write back. Do not try to see me. My father is watching everything. The best thing you can do now is forget me and find happiness with someone who can offer you the life you deserve. Yours. Always, Soren." Maren read it 3 times. Then she folded it carefully and placed it in her writing desk. He loved her. He was sacrificing himself to protect her, and he expected her to simply accept it. No. The word rose up from somewhere deep inside her, fierce and defiant. No. She had spent her entire life being overlooked, being invisible, accepting whatever scraps of attention the world deigned to throw her way. Not anymore. Soren Vance had seen her, had loved her, had promised to fight for her. Now it was her turn to fight for him. She just needed a plan. The Duke of Harcourt's London townhouse was a fortress of marble and disapproval. Maren stood across the street, watching servants come and go, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. She had spent 2 days planning this, 2 days gathering information, 2 days convincing Callum to help her instead of stopping her. He thought she was mad. Perhaps she was. But she was also done being passive, done letting other people decide her fate, done accepting that love was not enough. The announcement of Soren's engagement to Lady Isolde was scheduled for tonight, a grand ball at the Harcourt townhouse, attended by every important family in London. By morning, it would be official, irrevocable, unless she stopped it. Callum appeared at her elbow. "Are you certain about this?" "No." She straightened her spine. "But I am doing it anyway. Father will be furious. Father is already furious. What is a little more fury?" Callum almost smiled. "You have changed. I have been seen." She met his eyes. It is impossible to go back to being invisible after that. He squeezed her arm. "Then let us make certain you are seen tonight." They entered through the servants' entrance, a route Callum had mapped using information from Soren's valet, who apparently held no love for the Duke and was willing to help for the price of a better position elsewhere. The house was chaos. Servants rushed everywhere, preparing for the evening's festivities. No one gave them a second glance. They made their way up the back stairs, through a series of narrow hallways, until they reached the door to Soren's private study. Callum knocked twice, paused, knocked 3 more times, the signal they had arranged. The door opened. Soren stood there, dressed for the ball in immaculate evening clothes, looking like a man walking to his own execution. His eyes found Maren. For a moment, neither of them spoke. "What are you doing here?" he asked finally. His voice was raw, barely controlled. "I told you not to come. And I told you I choose you." She stepped forward. "Did you think I would simply accept your sacrifice and move on?" "You have to." His jaw tightened. "My father will destroy everything you love." "Your father can try." Callum spoke from behind her. "But he will find that the Ashford family is not so easily destroyed." "Callum." Soren stared at him. "You are helping her? She is my sister, and you are my friend." Callum's expression was fierce. "I have spent the past 2 days very angry at you, Soren. But I have also spent those 2 days watching my sister refuse to give up on you. That tells me something. It tells you she is stubborn. It tells me she loves you, and that you love her." Callum stepped closer. "So here is what is going to happen. You are going to go downstairs to that ball. You are going to stand in front of everyone and announce that you are not marrying Lady Isolde. And you are going to tell them why. My father will never allow it. Your father is not in control tonight." Maren reached for his hand. You do not understand." The desperation in his voice was painful to hear. "He has threatened to disinherit me, to cut me off entirely. If I do this, I will have nothing. You will have me." The words hung between them. Soren's eyes closed. "Maren, I know it is not enough." Her voice shook. "I know I am not a title or a fortune or a political alliance. I am just a woman who loves you. A woman who refuses to let you throw away your happiness because your father demands it. But if that is not enough for you, if you truly want to marry Lady Isolde and live the life he has planned, then tell me now, and I will leave. I will never bother you again." Silence. When he opened his eyes, they were wet. "You're enough," he said roughly. "You have always been enough. I was just too afraid to believe I could have you. Then stop being afraid." She squeezed his hand. "Be brave with me." He pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "I love you," he whispered against her hair. "I know. I'm terrified. I know that too." He laughed, a broken sound. "What if it all goes wrong? Then it goes wrong together." She pulled back to look at him. "That is what love is. Facing the disasters together instead of alone." From downstairs, the sound of music swelled. The ball was beginning. Soren looked at the door, then back at her. "Stay here," he said. "I will come for you when it is done." "No," she shook her head. "I am coming with you. Whatever happens, I am not hiding anymore. Your reputation is already destroyed." She smiled. "I might as well earn it." He kissed her, hard and fast, then took her hand. Together, they descended the stairs. The ballroom was magnificent. Hundreds of candles, crystal chandeliers, and the cream of London society dressed in their finest. At the center of the room, the Duke of Harcourt stood with Lady Isolde and her parents, waiting for the announcement that would seal his son's fate. The music stopped when Soren entered with Maren on his arm. Every head turned. The Duke's face went purple with rage. "Soren." His voice was a whip crack. "What is the meaning of this?" Soren walked forward, Maren beside him, until they stood in the center of the ballroom with every eye upon them. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice carrying clearly, "I apologize for the interruption. I know you were expecting an engagement announcement tonight. You will still receive one. But not the announcement my father planned." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "I will not be marrying Lady Isolde Wyndham." Soren's hand tightened on Maren's. "I will be marrying Miss Maren Ashford, the woman I have loved for 5 years, the woman I was too much of a coward to fight for until she showed me how." The Duke stepped forward. "You will do no such thing. I will do exactly that." Soren met his father's eyes without flinching. "You can disinherit me. You can cut me off. You can tell everyone in this room that I am a disgrace to the Vance name. But you cannot make me stop loving her, and you cannot force me to marry someone else." Silence. Then, from the back of the room, someone began to clap. Maren turned. Callum stood in the doorway, applauding steadily. Others joined him. Lady Isolde's mother, an elderly countess near the punch bowl, a young man Maren did not recognize. The applause spread like wildfire. The Duke looked around at his guests, at the support building for his son's rebellion, and for the first time in his life, he seemed uncertain. "This is not over," he said quietly. "No," Soren agreed, "but it is a beginning." He turned to Maren, taking both her hands in his. "Miss Ashford," he said, loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Will you marry me?" She was crying. She did not care. "Yes," she said, 1,000 times. "Yes." He kissed her in front of everyone, and for the first time in her life, Marin Ashford was not invisible. The scandal, when it erupted, was everything they had expected, and more. For weeks, London talked of nothing else. The Duke's son, rejecting a perfectly suitable match for a woman with no title, no connections, no particular fortune. The public declaration. The kiss. The father's fury and the crowd's unexpected approval. Opinions were divided. Some called Soren a romantic hero. Others called him a fool. The gossip columns had a field day. Through it all, Soren was unfailingly present. He called on Marin every day during approved hours, with her mother as chaperone. He escorted her to every social event that would have them, standing beside her when other women whispered and men leered. He made it abundantly clear that anyone who questioned her virtue would answer to him personally. His father did not speak to him for 3 months. Then, on a cold December evening, a letter arrived at the Ashford residence. It was addressed to Soren, who had been dining with the family, and it bore the Duke of Harcourt's seal. Soren read it in silence, his expression unreadable. "What does it say?" Marin asked. "He wants to meet." Soren set down the letter. "He says he has had time to reflect. He says he may have been hasty." May have been. My father does not apologize easily. Soren's mouth quirked. For him, this is practically groveling. The meeting happened 2 days later at the Duke's townhouse. Marin insisted on accompanying Soren, and he did not argue. The Duke was older than she remembered. Frailer. The past months had taken their toll. "Miss Ashford," he said stiffly, "I owe you an apology." She blinked. "You do?" "I underestimated you." He did not quite meet her eyes. "I saw only what you lacked, not what you possessed. My son tried to tell me, but I was too stubborn to listen. And now? Now I see that he was right." The Duke looked at his son, something almost like pride in his expression. "You have made him happy, happier than I have ever seen him. That is not nothing." "Thank you, Father," Soren said quietly. "Do not thank me yet." The Duke's expression hardened slightly. "I still expect you to fulfill your duties to this family. I still expect grandchildren and proper behavior and all the responsibilities that come with your position. Of course. But I will not stand in the way of your marriage." He extended his hand to Marin. "Welcome to the family, Miss Ashford. Try not to let my son become too insufferable." She shook his hand, too stunned to speak. The wedding was held in spring. It was smaller than society expected, larger than Marin had dreamed. Her family was there, Callum standing as Soren's best man, despite the absurdity of the arrangement. The Duke attended, stiff but present. Lady Isolde sent a gracious note of congratulations, and did not appear, which was probably for the best. Marin wore a dress the color of ivory silk, and when she walked down the aisle toward Soren, his eyes filled with tears. "I love you," he mouthed. "I know," she mouthed back. The ceremony was brief. The reception was joyful. And when they finally escaped to their carriage, leaving the celebration behind, Soren pulled her into his arms and kissed her until she forgot how to breathe. "We did it," she whispered. "We did. Your father actually smiled at me during the toast." "I saw. He's coming around." Soren brushed a strand of hair from her face. "You have that effect on people." "Do I?" "You have that effect on me." He kissed her forehead. "You make me want to be better. Braver. Worthy of the way you see me. You have always been worthy. Not always. But I am trying." The carriage rolled through the London streets, carrying them toward their new home, their new life, their new beginning. 1 year later, Marin stood in the garden of Harcourt Hall, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and rose. Her hand rested on the swell of her belly, where their first child grew. Wool gathering again. Soren's voice came from behind her, warm with amusement. She turned, smiling, remembering. Remembering what? The storm. The inn. The moment you told me you could not look away. He crossed to her, wrapping his arms around her waist from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder. I still cannot look away, he murmured. Good. Do you know what I thought, that day on the road, when I saw you standing in the rain? What? I thought. There she is, the woman I have been waiting for my entire life. And then I thought, she is going to hate me for stopping. She laughed. I did hate you. For about 5 minutes. And then you looked at me like I was the only person in the world. She turned in his arms, facing him. No one had ever looked at me like that before. No one had ever been worth looking at like that before. He kissed her softly, tenderly, the kiss of a man who had found exactly what he was searching for. Every man overlooked her, she said against his lips, until I saw what no one else did. He pulled back, his gray eyes warm with love. And I will never stop seeing you, Maren, for as long as I live. Promise? I promise. He placed his hand over hers on her belly. I promise you everything. The sun set behind them, painting the world in gold. And in the garden of Harcourt Hall, 2 people who had found each other against all odds stood together, facing whatever came next. Because some loves are worth fighting for. Some choices are worth every consequence. And some women, the quiet ones, the overlooked ones, the ones who fade into the background while the world spins around them, sometimes those women find someone who sees them exactly as they are. And that changes everything. It had changed everything for her.